Subscribe, like, and comment if you're ready to step into the darkest corners of America's prison system. Because once this story starts, there's no turning back. The night the alarm screamed at Pelican Bay State Prison, the fog off the Pacific clung to the razor wire like a warning. Guards would later say it felt wrong before they even knew why. The kind of wrong that crawls under your skin and refuses to leave. Cell Block D was locked down, the tear lights buzzing overhead, when an officer found the first sign that something had gone terribly off script. A heavy steel door stood ajar, just enough to notice. Inside, a cell that was supposed to hold one of America's most dangerous inmates sat empty. No broken bars, no force locks, just silence. Pelican Bay was designed for men who could not be controlled anywhere else. The worst of the worst. Leaders of prison gangs. Serial killers. Men whose names never made the news anymore, but whose reputations still haunted law enforcement files across the country. Nobody simply vanished from Pelican Bay. Not without a trail of blood. Not without a riot. Not without someone sounding the alarm. Yet here it was. An empty cell. And a sinking feeling spreading through the prison like poison. Within minutes, the prison was sealed. Armed response teams flooded the corridors. Watchtowers swept the yard with white-hot beams. But the missing inmate was not found. Instead, something else was discovered. In a maintenance corridor behind the cell block, an officer's flashlight landed on a shape slumped against the concrete wall. A body, not an inmate, a staff member. Identification still clipped to his belt. His eyes stared upward, frozen in shock. By dawn, federal investigators were on their way. Pelican Bay had crossed a line it was never supposed to cross. The inmate who vanished that night was Marcus Reed. Officially, he was inmate P11347. Unofficially, he was a ghost story told in hushed voices from San Quentin to ADX Florence. Reed had been convicted of orchestrating multiple murders without ever pulling a trigger himself. He was a manipulator, a strategist, a man who could start wars with a whispered sentence. When he was transferred to Pelican Bay years earlier, the message was clear. This is where you come when there's nowhere else to send you. And now he was gone. Special Agent Daniel Mercer arrived as the fog lifted. Mercer had spent 2 decades hunting prison corruption cases. He knew the pattern. Inmate escapes did not start with inmates. They started with people on the inside who were compromised, threatened, or paid. The dead staff member was the first question, not the last. Mercer walked the corridor where the body had been found. No obvious signs of a struggle. No weapon nearby. The man's name was Thomas Ivy, a maintenance supervisor with 15 years of clean service. No disciplinary issues. No known debts. No criminal history. On paper, he was invisible. But invisibility, Mercer knew, was often the most dangerous thing of all. As investigators dug into Reed's file, a darker picture emerged. Reed had been officially placed in long-term isolation, cut off from other inmates. Unofficially, he had still been communicating. Letters intercepted. Messages passed through third parties. Cryptic references to something called a ledger. Nobody knew what a ledger was, only that men who crossed Reed tended to disappear into solitary transfers or worse. The warden, Ellen Price, insisted there had been no breach, no corruption, no warning signs. Her voice was steady in press briefings, but behind closed doors, staff whispered that she had been warned months earlier. An internal memo flagged unusual access logs near Reed's cell. Maintenance requests that made no sense. Cameras going offline for seconds at a time. Always seconds. Always just enough. Then there was the second inmate. During a routine head count following the lockdown, officers discovered another empty cell. This one belonged to Louis Calderon, a former gang enforcer turned informant. Calderon had been scheduled to testify in a federal case involving prison-based drug trafficking. His transfer out of Pelican Bay was set for the following week. He never made it. 2 missing inmates, 1 dead staff member, and a prison that was supposed to be impenetrable suddenly felt paper-thin. Mercer's team began reconstructing the timeline. At 11:47 p.m., a power fluctuation hit cell block D. At 11:49, Thomas Ivy's badge was used to access a restricted corridor. At 11:52, a blind spot in the camera system coincided with a maintenance cart moving through a service tunnel. At 12:01 a.m., alarms triggered when a door failed to reseal properly. 9 minutes. That was all it took. The deeper they looked, the worse it got. Ivy's bank record showed a recent deposit. Not large enough to raise immediate alarms, but unusual. When traced, it led to a shell company with no clear owner. The same shell company appeared in financial records tied to families of inmates housed thousands of miles apart. This was not an escape. It was an extraction. As the sun climbed higher, helicopters combed the rugged coastline around the prison. Roadblocks snapped into place across Northern California. The public was told there was no immediate danger. Inside the Task Force Command Center, nobody believed that for a second. Marcus Reed was not running. He never ran. He planned. Mercer sat alone with the files late into the night. He kept returning to one detail. Calderon, an informant with enemies on every side. Why take him too? Unless Calderon was not a liability, but a key. A breakthrough came just before midnight. A junior analyst flagged a discrepancy in archived surveillance footage. A frame that had been overwritten but not fully erased. It showed the maintenance cart stopped in the service tunnel. Two figures stood beside it. One was clearly Thomas Ivy. The other was taller, broader, wearing a guard's uniform. But the face was wrong. The uniform belonged to Officer Nathan Cole, a corrections officer who had died in a training accident 6 months earlier. His badge number had been retired, his locker sealed, yet there he was, alive on the screen. Mercer felt the room tilt. If that footage was real, then someone had gone to extraordinary lengths to resurrect a dead man's identity, which meant this operation had been planned long before anyone noticed the first crack in Pelican Bay's walls. The analyst zoomed in on the image one last time. In the reflection of the cart's metal surface, barely visible, was something else. A tattoo, a symbol known to federal investigators. One tied to a network of inmates who had been quietly disappearing from maximum security facilities across the country. Mercer stared at the screen, his pulse pounding. Because if that symbol meant what he thought it meant, then Marcus Reed was not the beginning of this story. He was just the proof that it had already succeeded. And when investigators opened the sealed evidence locker tied to Officer Cole's death, what they found inside changed everything. By the time dawn broke over Pelican Bay, the investigation had already turned inward. Special Agent Mercer stood in the evidence room staring at Officer Nathan Cole's sealed locker. It had not been opened since the official investigation into Cole's death was closed. A tragic accident, they said, a fall during a training exercise. Case resolved, but now the locker door creaked open and the truth spilled out piece by piece. Inside were items that never made it into the original inventory. A second uniform, slightly altered, a burner phone wrapped in plastic, and beneath everything else, a thin notebook with handwritten names, dates, and numbers. No explanations, just entries, coordinates, transfer schedules, housing units, a map of the prison system. Mercer felt a familiar tightening in his chest. This was not improvisation. This was architecture. The notebook was rushed to a secure lab, while Mercer turned his attention to the man who was not supposed to exist anymore. Official records showed Nathan Cole was buried in a cemetery outside Sacramento. Dental records confirmed the body. Family had identified him. Everything was clean. Too clean. When investigators reopened Cole's death file, inconsistencies began to surface. A witness statement that contradicted the timeline. An injury pattern that did not match the fall described. A toxicology report amended after submission. Someone had rewritten history, and they had done it carefully. Meanwhile, the hunt for Marcus Reed and Louis Calderon intensified. Every known associate was flagged. Every letter Reed had ever sent was re-examined. The word ledger appeared again and again, hidden in coded language, disguised as mundane conversation. Page numbers that did not exist. References to debts already paid. Mercer realized something chilling. Reed had never intended to escape alone. Pelican Bay was not the target. It was a demonstration. Calderon's disappearance added another layer of urgency. As an informant, Calderon knew names, guards on payroll, routes used to move contraband, safe houses outside the wire. If Reed had Calderon alive, then Reed had leverage over both sides of the law. And if Calderon was dead, then Reed had already tied off a loose end. Late that afternoon, a body was found washed up near Crescent City, miles south of the prison. Forensic teams confirmed the worst within hours. Thomas Ivy, the maintenance supervisor, his death had not been accidental. There were marks on his wrist consistent with restraints, bruising that suggested he had been alive long after leaving the prison grounds. Ivy had helped him, and then he had been erased. The message was clear. Cooperation ended in silence. As news of the discovery spread through the task force, pressure mounted from Washington. How many inmates were involved? How many facilities compromised? How far did this reach go? Mercer did not have answers yet, but he had instincts. And his instincts told him this network was older than Reed and far more patient. Then the second shoe dropped. A federal marshal assigned to Calderon protection detail failed to report for duty. His vehicle was found abandoned near Coastal Access Road. Engine cold. Phone smashed. No sign of a struggle. Mercer stared at the report, feeling the walls close in. This was no longer about a prison breach. This was about an organization that moved freely between the inside and the outside, wearing uniforms when it needed to, and disappearing when it did not. That night, Mercer received a message on a secure line. No caller ID, no traceable origin, just coordinates in a single sentence. You are looking in the wrong direction. Against protocol, Mercer went alone. The coordinates led him inland, away from the prison, to an abandoned logging facility swallowed by redwoods. The air was damp and heavy, the kind that carried sound in strange ways. Mercer moved cautiously, weapon drawn, every sense on edge. Inside the main structure, he found evidence of recent activity. Food wrappers, medical supplies, a portable radio tuned to a frequency used by corrections officers, and on a plywood table in the center of the room, the ledger. It was thicker than he expected. Dozens of pages, meticulously organized. Names of inmates marked with symbols. Green for active, red for terminated, yellow for pending. Marcus Reed's name was not listed. Neither was Louis Calderon's. Instead, at the very back, was a section labeled assets. Under it were names Mercer recognized. Guards, transport officers, medical staff, and one name that made his blood run cold. Warden Ellen Price. Before Mercer could process what he was seeing, headlights flared outside. Engines, more than one. He shut off his flashlight and slipped behind a support beam as voices echoed through the structure. They were calm, confident. This was familiar territory for him. Mercer watched as three men entered. One wore a guard jacket. Another wore civilian clothes. The third moved with a limp, favoring his right leg. When the light hit his face, Mercer recognized him instantly. Louis Calderon was alive. He looked thinner, harder, his eyes scanning the room with the alertness of someone who knew he was being hunted. The men spoke quietly, but Mercer caught fragments. A transfer gone wrong. A schedule accelerated. Reed growing impatient. Then Calderon said something that changed everything. He knows you are tightening the net, Calderon said. That is why Pelican Bay was burned. It was a distraction. Mercer's pulse spiked. Burned, as in sacrificed. The guard replied without hesitation. Reed said this would happen. He said you would all look backward while the real movement finished. Movement where? Before Mercer could hear the answer, his foot brushed against loose gravel. The sound was small, but in the silence it was deafening. The men froze. The guard turned toward Mercer's position, and moving toward his weapon. Mercer stepped out, gun raised, heart hammering. For a split second, nobody moved. Then Calderon smiled, not in relief, not in fear, in recognition. You finally caught up, Calderon said, but you are already too late. Behind Mercer, a door slammed shut, and somewhere in the darkness outside, a radio crackled to life with familiar voice. Marcus Reed's voice. The voice came through the radio calm and unhurried, like a man reading weather conditions instead of sealing fates. Agent Mercer, Marcus Reed said, you always did your homework. That is why I wanted you to see it for yourself. Mercer kept his weapon trained forward, but his mind raced. The men in the room did not rush him. They did not need to. Reed had already won something here. Time, where are you? Mercer demanded. Reed chuckled softly, close enough to hear you breathe, far enough to stay free. The guard lowered his weapon slightly, as if awaiting instructions. Calderon leaned against the table, his limp more pronounced now, the toll of months on the run etched into his face. "You should understand," Reed continued. "Pelican Bay was never about escape. It was about proof. Proof that even the most controlled environment in America can be rewritten." Mercer realized then what the ledger truly represented. It was not just a list. It was a system. A parallel chain of command running beneath the official one. Inmates were not disappearing. They were being reassigned. "You move them," Mercer said. "You move dangerous inmates out, one by one." "Not dangerous," Reed replied. "Useful." Outside, engines revved. More vehicles. The forest echoed with movement. Mercer's hand tightened on his weapon, but he did not fire. Every instinct told him that pulling the trigger here would not end this. It would only make it louder. Calderon finally spoke again. "They think prisons are cages. They forget cages have doors, and doors are people with keys." Mercer glanced at the ledger. The yellow marked names. Pending. Those were the ones scheduled next. Transfers disguised as medical emergencies. Releases hidden behind clerical errors. Death staged and confirmed by corrupted officials. "How many?" Mercer asked. Reed did not answer immediately. When he did, his voice lost its amusement. "Enough." A sharp pain exploded at the back of Mercer's head. The world tilted, then folded inward. He hit the floor hard, the ledger sliding just out of reach. When Mercer came to, daylight filtered through broken windows. The room was empty. The ledger was gone. Outside, tire tracks cut deep into the date, already fading beneath falling needles and wind. He staggered to his feet and reached for his radio. Static. No signal. By the time Mercer made it back to the road and flagged down a patrol unit, the operation had vanished like smoke. No suspects. No vehicles. No Calderon. No Reed. The fallout was immediate and brutal. Warden Ellen Price was placed on administrative leave within 48 hours. Financial records tied her to offshore accounts that mirrored the shell companies in the ledger. She denied everything. Claimed coercion. Claimed threats. Before charges could be filed, she was found dead in her home. Official cause. Suicide. No note. The investigation ballooned across state lines. Facilities in Arizona, Colorado, and Louisiana reported irregularities. Inmates long assumed dead resurfaced under new identities. Others simply remained missing, their cases quietly reclassified to avoid panic. Mercer testified before closed committees. He handed over everything he remembered, every face, every voice. It was never enough. Without the ledger, the network could not be mapped. Without Reed, it could not be proven. 6 months later, the task force was dissolved. Funding redirected. Official statements declared the Pelican Bay incident contained. Isolated. Resolved. But Mercer knew better. He followed the trails others ignored. Small crimes. Unusual parole violations. Anonymous tips that mention familiar symbols. A tattoo here. A coded phrase there. Pieces of machine still turning. Then, on a rainy morning in Ohio, a man was arrested during a traffic stop. No license, no records. His fingerprints came back as belonging to an inmate who had died in federal custody 12 years earlier. The arresting officer reported something strange. As they put the cuffs on, the man smiled and said, "You are already behind." Mercer read the report in silence. 3 weeks later, a package arrived at his home. No return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No envelope. No explanation. Just a list. 5 names, all marked in yellow. At the bottom, written in careful handwriting, was a message Mercer recognized instantly. The system still works. Marcus Reed was not behind bars. He was not hiding. He was watching. And somewhere, behind walls the public still believed were secure, America's most dangerous inmates were not waiting to be controlled. They were waiting to be called. If this story pulled you into the shadows and left you uneasy, make sure you are ready for what comes next. The next case goes even deeper, and you will not want to miss it.